The corridors of Ardent Spire were still scarred from the pirate attack. Burn marks stretched across the walls and faint trails of smoke curled from melted panels. The once silent research station now buzzed with repairs and nervous whispers. For the Zalathi, who had not seen violence in centuries, the event had shaken their hearts deeply. But to Captain Elias Ward, it was familiar. Too familiar. He stood near a viewport, staring at the stars with a quiet expression. The reflections of distant suns glimmered across his face. Behind him, engineers repaired the damage, their movements quick and uneasy. Sarika Valrin entered the observation deck slowly, her long silver cloak brushing the floor. Her violet eyes carried questions she could not ignore. "Captain Ward," she began gently, "the Council wishes to thank you. Without your quick actions, we might have lost the entire station." Elias turned slightly, offering a tired smile. "You don't need to thank me. I just did what anyone would have done." She tilted her head. "Not anyone. None of us knew how to act. We froze." He studied her for a moment. "Because you've never been taught to defend yourselves." Sarika looked down. "We believed such knowledge was no longer needed." "Then your people were lucky," Elias said quietly. "Peace that lasts this long. That's a gift. But it's fragile if no one remembers how to protect it." Sarika's voice softened. "You speak as if peace is something that must be guarded." He nodded. "Always." Over the next few days, Elias became a subject of fascination for the scientists. They asked endless questions about his world, his people, and the wars he had fought. Some were polite, others cautious. Elias answered patiently, but he never spoke with pride about the battles. "War isn't something to glorify," he said once to a group of curious researchers. "It's a failure of peace, but sometimes it's the only way to bring peace back." Sarika watched from the corner, studying the way he spoke. There was strength in his voice, but also sadness. Every word seemed heavy, as if it carried memories he would rather forget. Later that evening, Sarika invited him to the station's garden dome. It was her favorite place, a quiet chamber filled with soft light and trees that shimmered with crystal leaves. Streams of silver water flowed through the pathways, reflecting the stars beyond the glass ceiling. "This place is beautiful," Elias said as they walked slowly. "You've built peace into everything you do." "Yes," Sarika replied. "For us, peace is life. Our ancestors believed that if we removed all thoughts of violence, the universe itself would become kind." Elias smiled faintly. "Did it?" She hesitated. "Perhaps not entirely. There are still pirates, and the Vurax Dominion keeps expanding into new systems. Then the universe didn't get the message," he said softly. Sarika stopped walking and looked at him seriously. "Captain, why do humans fight, even when it brings loss and pain?" Elias took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the artificial stars above them. "Because peace isn't free. It costs effort, courage, and sometimes blood. When you love something enough, your home, your people, you fight to protect it. Even if it hurts," she frowned. "That sounds tragic." "It can be," he admitted, "but it's also beautiful. Because it means people care." For a long time they stood in silence, listening to the gentle hum of the garden's wind systems. Weeks passed, and Elias continued to adapt to life in the new age. He learned their technology, shared his knowledge of old systems, and even repaired some of their damaged drones. Yet some among the Zalathi Council still feared him. One morning Sarika was called to a council meeting. The tall crystal chamber shimmered with pale blue light as the elders gathered around the central table. Their eyes were filled with caution. Elder Varun spoke first. "Scholar Valrin, the human's presence disturbs many. His ways are violent. We should not allow such influence here." Sarika clasped her hands calmly. "He has done nothing to harm us." "He saved us." "Well, that may be true," Varun replied. "But he awakens dangerous ideas, training, defense, weapons. Such things invite more conflict," another elder nodded. "The pirates may return if they think we have something to fight with. We must remain neutral." Sarika took a deep breath. "With respect, we were neutral before, and they attacked us anyway." The chamber fell silent. Her words carried truth none could deny. Elder Varun's tone softened. "Sarika, you believe this human means well. But remember, his species vanished for a reason." She bowed her head slightly, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe they vanished because they fought for something greater than survival." After the meeting, Sarika found Elias in the hangar bay, repairing one of the damaged patrol drones. Sparks glimmered around him as he worked. "You're quiet," he said without looking up. "Let me guess. Council trouble?" They think you're dangerous, she admitted. Elias chuckled softly. They're not wrong. Her eyes widened slightly. That is not reassuring. He smiled and put down his tools. I mean, I'm dangerous to people who threaten others, not to those who just want to live. She studied him silently. You don't seem angry about their fear. I understand it, he said. They've lived without conflict for so long that defense looks like aggression. But if trouble comes again, they'll need to choose run or resist. Sarika hesitated. Would you fight again? After all you've seen? His answer was calm. If I had to protect innocent lives, yes. Her heart felt heavy with questions she couldn't voice. Days later, small trade ships arrived at Ardent Spire with supplies and news. Among them came troubling reports. Colonies near the edge of Vurax space were being raided. Settlements vanished without word. Sarika found Elias studying the star charts in the control room. You've heard, she said quietly. He nodded. They're moving closer. The Dominion never stops expanding. Our council believes they will not bother us, she said, almost hopefully. Elias looked at her. Do you believe that? Sarika's voice faltered. I don't know. He stepped toward the window, his reflection hard and thoughtful. Then prepare anyway. Hope for peace, but be ready for war. She sighed softly. That's not our way. Then maybe it should be, he replied gently. A week later, the pirates returned, but this time something was different. Their ships bore the mark of the Vurax Dominion. They were testing the station's defenses. The alarms echoed again. Sarika ran to the command deck, her heart racing. She found Elias already there, adjusting the drone patterns and coordinating the response. Elias, what are you doing? She asked. Giving your people a fighting chance, he said, activating defense shields. If they breach the station, it's over. The council members shouted over the comms, demanding he stand down. No more fighting, they cried. We will surrender if needed. Elias's jaw tightened. Surrender is not peace, it's permission for them to take whatever they want. He turned to Sarika. I need your help. Can you reroute power from the research decks to the defense grid? Her hands trembled. I've never done this before. Then I'll show you, he said firmly. You're quick. You'll learn. For a brief moment she hesitated, but then something inside her shifted. She nodded. Together they worked side by side, rerouting energy flows and stabilizing shields. The drones fired precise shots, driving the attackers back. When the pirates finally retreated, the station was scarred again, but still standing. After the battle, Sarika sat beside Elias in the observation deck. The stars outside looked calm, as if nothing had happened. You saved us again, she said softly. Elias shook his head. No, you did. You made the choice to stand. She looked at him, her voice low. I never thought I could. I was taught that strength is a danger. Strength is only dangerous when you use it to dominate, he replied. When you use it to protect, it becomes honor. Sarika thought about that for a long moment. I think I'm beginning to understand why your people fought. Elias smiled faintly. Not for war's sake. For life's. The silence that followed was gentle, filled with respect. Outside, distant stars burned quietly, unaware that on a small station far from Earth, an ancient lesson was being reborn, one of courage, duty, and the will to stand firm when peace alone was not enough. And for the first time in her life, Sarika Valrin no longer feared the word fight. The days after the second attack passed slowly, filled with repairs and quiet tension. The once calm halls of Ardent Spire now echoed with the low hum of shield generators and the occasional clatter of tools. For the first time in generations, the Zelathi people were building defenses. Yet, even as peace settled again, Sarika Valrin felt a storm growing inside her. Every night she replayed the battles in her mind, the fear, the courage, the strange strength she had felt when standing beside Captain Elias Ward. Before meeting him, she had believed that peace meant never raising a hand, never resisting. But now, she understood something deeper. Peace meant protecting what you loved from those who would destroy it. One morning, she stood at the observation deck, watching repair drones glide outside the glass walls. Her reflection stared back. Calm face, steady eyes, but something within had changed. Elias joined her quietly. He wore his simple uniform, its edges frayed from time. He looked older now, though the years hadn't truly touched him. You haven't been sleeping, he said softly. Sarika smiled faintly. You notice everything. Old habit, he replied. Hard to stop watching for danger. She turned to face him. Is that how humans lived? Always watching? Elias nodded. Not always afraid, but always ready. That's how we survived. Sarika looked away. My people think that readiness invites war. He folded his arms. And I think forgetting how to defend invites worse. Later that day, the council gathered once again. The central chamber shimmered with pale blue light as the elders discussed the growing threat of the Vurax dominion. Reports had spread across nearby colonies, entire settlements vanishing overnight. The Vurax didn't just raid, they conquered. Elder Varun's voice trembled. The Dominion's fleet grows. Their scouts have been seen near our sector. We must move deeper into neutral space, another elder disagreed. We cannot abandon Ardent Spire. It holds centuries of research. The room filled with worried voices. Only Sarika stood silent, her thoughts turning to Elias. When they finally asked for her opinion, she spoke slowly, carefully. If we run, they will follow. If we stay unprepared, we will fall. There is another way. Varun frowned. You speak as if you plan to fight them, Scholar Valrin. I don't plan to fight, she said softly. But I plan to learn. To stand. The elders exchanged uncertain glances. You've been spending too much time with the human, one said coldly. Sarika's voice remained calm. Perhaps. But he saved us twice while we debated. The chamber went silent. Even Varun lowered his gaze. In that moment, Sarika realized she was no longer just a historian. She was a student of something ancient, something the galaxy had forgotten. Elias began training volunteers from the station. At first, only a handful came. Mostly younger researchers curious about the human soldier. They met in the hangar bay, where space was wide and the light from the nearby moon painted the floor in silver tones. He started with the basics: awareness, coordination, teamwork. There were no weapons, only wooden staffs and simple shields. Sarika watched from the side, taking notes as the group stumbled through the first exercises. Focus, Elias called. The fight isn't about strength, it's about control. You lose focus, you lose everything. One trainee dropped his staff and laughed nervously. Captain, we are scientists, not soldiers. Elias smiled faintly. So were the first people who fought for Earth. Ordinary people until they decided not to lose anymore. By the end of the week, twice as many joined. By the end of the month, half the station came to learn. Even the council members began sending observers. Sarika, too, joined them. She wasn't strong, but she was quick and determined. Elias corrected her movements patiently, showing her how to balance and read an opponent's motion. One evening, after training, she approached him as the others left. I keep making mistakes, she said, rubbing her wrists. He shook his head. Mistakes are how you learn. Every fall teaches you how to stand better. She looked at him quietly. You make it sound so easy. It's not, he said. But courage isn't about ease, it's about choice. Those words stayed with her for days. Months passed. The Zalathi slowly changed. They learned discipline, unity, and the value of strength guided by wisdom. Ardent Spire no longer felt like a helpless research station. It felt alive with purpose. Sarika's students studied both science and defense, and she began to teach them about humanity, not the wars, but the spirit behind them. She told them about courage, sacrifice, and standing firm for what mattered. But outside their quiet station, darkness was moving. The Vurax Dominion expanded rapidly. Refugees fled from nearby systems, bringing stories of destruction. One day, a damaged freighter limped into their sector, its hull scorched and cracked. The crew, frightened and weak, told Sarika and Elias the truth. The Dominion is coming, said the captain, a trembling Avanar trader. They're sending a fleet to this sector. They want Ardent Spire. It's rich with data. Elias's jaw tightened. How long? 2 weeks, maybe less. Sarika felt her heart race. The words of the elders echoed in her mind. We cannot fight them. But now she knew they had to try. That night, she found Elias alone in the command deck, looking over holographic maps. Lines of light marked possible battle routes. Are you planning for war? She asked softly. He didn't look up. Planning to survive. She walked closer, watching the glowing displays. Do we even stand a chance? He hesitated before answering. Maybe not. But I've seen smaller groups win because they refuse to give up. If we prepare, really prepare, we can make them pay dearly for every inch. Sarika looked at him, her voice firm. Then teach me. Teach all of us. He met her gaze, eyes full of determination. You already started learning the most important part, Sarika. The rest, I'll show you. The next 2 weeks turned Ardent Spire into something new. Shields were upgraded, drones reprogrammed, power systems reinforced. The Zalathi worked day and night under Elias's guidance. Sarika led the coordination between teams, proving to be an excellent strategist. She studied old human battle logs, learning how to predict movement and defend positions. Elias noticed her progress with quiet pride. You're becoming quite the leader, he said during one late-night session. She smiled. I'm only following your example. He shook his head. No, you're leading in your own way. That's what humanity always hoped others would do. Learn from us, then do better. For a brief moment, Sarika felt something warm in her chest, admiration, and something deeper she didn't yet name. When the warning finally came, it was almost peaceful. Multiple signatures detected, the computer announced. Unidentified fleet approaching. Outside, the void shimmered with the arrival of massive ships. The Vorax Dominion had come. Their vessels were black and sharp, glowing with red energy. Inside the command deck, the crew stood ready. The air was thick with tension, but no one panicked. Elias looked around the room. You all know what's at stake. You've built something worth defending. Remember that when fear comes knocking. He turned to Sarika. You take command of the shield operations. I'll handle the outer defense. Sarika nodded firmly. Understood. As he walked toward the hangar, she called after him, Captain. He stopped and looked back. Her voice was calm but filled with emotion. Whatever happens, thank you for showing us who we can be. Elias smiled. Just promise me one thing, don't stop standing. Then he was gone, heading toward the front lines. The first blasts struck moments later. Shields flared blue, lighting the darkness. The battle had begun. Sarika's hands moved quickly over the control panels, directing power flows, monitoring shields, and coordinating drones. Her voice was steady, commanding. Outside, Elias led the automated defenses, maneuvering drones with precision. Each movement, each strike carried the discipline of centuries-old training. The Zalathi watched in awe. The man they once feared had become their protector, and his courage was lighting theirs. When the Vurax began retreating to regroup, Sarika allowed herself a brief breath. Status? She asked. Minor damage. Shield stable, her assistant reported. She looked toward the stars, where Elias's ship darted between enemy lines. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but pride. For the first time, the Zalathi were not just peaceful observers. They were defenders of their own destiny, and in the fire of battle, Sarika Valrin felt something awaken in her people that had slept for centuries, the will to fight for peace. The stars around Nova Station looked peaceful that night, calm and endless. But everyone on the station knew that peace was only an illusion. The Vurax Dominion fleet was coming. They were ruthless conquerors who believed fear was stronger than unity. Inside the command center, the air was heavy with tension. Technicians moved quickly between screens, voices low, while security officers checked defense grids again and again. They all tried to appear confident, but their hearts trembled with uncertainty. Sarika Valrin stood near the main holo table, her eyes focused on the incoming data. Red markers were appearing on the screen, enemy ships, dozens of them, slowly approaching Nova Station. For years she had studied history from a peaceful distance, but now she was standing inside it. Near her, Captain Elias Ward looked calm. His expression was steady, though his eyes were sharp and alert. He was dressed in light combat armor, simple but functional, with the human Earth insignia still marked on the chest plate. They're almost in range, Sarika said, her voice trembling slightly. Elias nodded. Then it's time. He turned toward the group of Zalathi officers standing behind him. Their tall, silver-skinned figures reflected the blue light of the monitors. They were scholars and explorers, not soldiers, but now they carried weapons, awkwardly, as if holding tools they were never meant to use. You all know what's coming, Elias began, his voice deep but calm. The Vurax believe you will surrender. They think peace has made you weak, but you have something stronger than fear. You have purpose. You are not fighting to conquer. You are fighting to protect your home, your families, your right to live free. Sarika watched as silence filled the room. Even those who had doubted him stood straighter. His words carried weight not because of power but because of truth. When the alarm sounded, the lights dimmed and the red emergency glow filled the station. The enemy had arrived. Defensive formations ready, Sarika called out, her voice more confident now. Shields to full capacity. Energy grid stable, replied one technician. Elias leaned over the table. Let them come close. Don't fire yet. We'll make them believe you're scared. Sarika nodded, understanding his plan. The Vurax always attacked with arrogance. They expected easy victories. Elias wanted them overconfident before striking back. Minutes passed. Then the first wave hit. Massive explosions shook the station as the Vurax fired plasma torpedoes. Shields flared blue, struggling to hold. The Zalathi gasped as the walls vibrated and panels flickered. But the defenses held firm. Return fire, Elias ordered. Dozens of defense turrets came alive, shooting beams of bright energy into the void. The dark sky filled with flashing lights. 2 enemy ships exploded, scattering debris through space. Direct hit on their forward cruisers, Sarika shouted. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she smiled for the first time during battle. Elias allowed himself a small grin. Good. Now let's show them what humans taught you. Hours passed like seconds. The Vurax pressed harder, sending more ships trying to overwhelm the defenders. Nova Station's hull shook again and again. Fires broke out in some decks, and medics rushed to help the wounded. Still no one ran. No one surrendered. Elias moved constantly, giving orders, encouraging soldiers, even helping with damaged equipment. He seemed tireless, like a storm refusing to fade. Sarika followed his lead, using every lesson she had learned. When one of the shield generators failed, she didn't hesitate. She ran to the engineering deck with 2 assistants climbing through smoke and sparks. Her white scholar's robe was blackened by dust, but she didn't care. We need to reroute power from the auxiliary cores, she shouted over the noise. That could overload the main reactor, one engineer protested. Then we'll balance the output manually, she replied. Together they worked, hands shaking, trying to save the defenses. When power surged again, the lights flickered back to life. The shield barrier reappeared outside the window, a glowing blue wall against the dark. Elias's voice came through the communicator, steady and calm. Good work, Sarika. You bought us time. She took a deep breath, wiping sweat from her forehead. Time is what we need. The battle dragged into the next cycle. The Vurax fleet began to pull back slightly, preparing for a final strike. They're reorganizing, Elias said, studying the holomap. They'll hit us with everything they have next time. If they break through, they'll destroy the habitat levels. Sarika looked at the glowing red lines. Then what do we do? He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. We take the fight to them. Her eyes widened. You mean, leave the station? He nodded. We can't just wait to be destroyed. We strike first, hit their command ship. If we cut off their control, the rest will fall into confusion. Sarika hesitated. But that's suicide. We don't have the numbers. Maybe not, Elias said quietly. But we have courage. And sometimes that's enough. There was no time to argue. Elias led a small team aboard a fighter shuttle. Sarika wanted to stop him, but deep inside she knew he had already made up his mind. Before leaving, he turned to her. If we don't come back, you keep them fighting. You know what to do now. Sarika's throat tightened. You always come back, she said softly. He smiled faintly. I'll try. Then he was gone. In space, the battle intensified. The shuttle darted between enemy cruisers, weaving through fire and debris. Elias piloted with precision, his hands steady on the controls. Targeting the command vessel, said one of the Zalathi co-pilots. Stay low, Elias replied. We'll use their own debris as cover. The shuttle swooped close to a burning frigate, avoiding plasma blasts. Then with a sudden burst of speed, it dove straight toward the Vurax flagship. The enemy didn't expect a direct attack. By the time they noticed, it was too late. Launch the payload, Elias shouted. A bright explosion followed, shaking even the distant Nova station. The command ship was gone, destroyed in a flash of light. Back at the station, Sarika and the others watched in silence. Then one by one, the enemy ships began to scatter. Without leadership, they fled into the darkness. Cheers erupted across the control room. The impossible had happened, they had won, but Sarika didn't cheer. She searched the screens for Elias's shuttle. There was no sign. Her chest ached. Elias, she whispered. Moments later, the radar beeped, a small signal returning from the far side of the battlefield. The shuttle was damaged but alive. Sarika exhaled deeply, tears in her eyes. "Bring him home," she said. When the battle ended, Nova Station floated quietly among the stars. The fires were out, the damage was heavy, but the people stood victorious. For the first time in centuries, the Zelathi had fought and survived. Elias walked through the halls, tired but smiling. Wherever he passed, people saluted or bowed their heads. But he waved it off. "No need for that," he said. "You did this yourselves." In the observation deck, Sarika waited for him. The stars outside shone brighter now, as if proud of what had been done. "You were right," she said softly. "Peace without strength is fragile. But now I think I understand what true peace means." Elias nodded. "It means being ready to defend what matters." She looked at him with deep respect. "You've changed us, Captain Ward." He shook his head. "No, you changed yourselves. I only reminded you what was already inside." They stood in silence for a long time, watching the stars. Beyond the window, the wreckage of enemy ships drifted silently, proof of their courage. And for the first time in her life, Sarika felt proud, not of her knowledge, but of her people's strength. The galaxy had learned that day that humans might have been forgotten, but their spirit never was. The stars above Nova Station glowed softly now, peaceful and quiet. It was hard to believe that only a few cycles ago, the same stars had witnessed explosions and fire. The great battle against the Virax Dominion was over, and victory belonged to the defenders. The once broken halls of the station were now filled with life again. Engineers repaired burned corridors, medics treated the injured, and the laughter of children could be heard once more. The sound of hope had returned. Sarika Valrin walked through the command deck slowly. Her long white robe was marked with faint stains and patches, scars of the war they had fought. But she didn't mind. Every mark told a story. Every line of dust meant survival. She paused beside a large observation window and looked out at the glowing stars. They seemed endless and calm, but her thoughts were heavy. "It's over," she whispered to herself. But peace always asks for something in return. Behind her, the soft sound of footsteps made her turn. Captain Elias Ward entered the room, his arm still in a sling from his wounds, but his eyes bright as ever. "You should be resting," Sarika said, half smiling. "I did," Elias replied with a shrug. "For 15 minutes. That's more than I ever got during the old wars." Sarika smiled wider, shaking her head. "You humans never stop, do you?" "Not if we can help it," he said, walking up beside her. Together they looked out into the stars. For a moment they stood in silence, the quiet hum of the station surrounding them. Then Sarika spoke softly. "You changed us, Elias. Before you came, we believed peace was something we could just keep forever. We didn't understand that peace needs to be guarded, not just wished for." Elias's expression was thoughtful. "You already had the heart for it," he said gently. "You just forgot how to use it," Sarika nodded. "You made us remember." In the following weeks, Nova Station became a symbol of courage across the Orion expanse. Other colonies and civilizations sent messages of respect and gratitude. The Zelathi, once known as quiet scholars, were now being called the Guardians of Nova. Everywhere Sarika went, people greeted her warmly, calling her the brave historian. But she always corrected them. "I wasn't brave," she said. "He was." Still, she knew in her heart that the courage Elias had taught them was spreading. The Zelathi had begun training programs, forming defense teams, and studying human strategies, not for conquest, but for protection. Children in schools learned about Captain Elias Ward, the human who showed them what true strength meant. His words were repeated like an old proverb. Peace without strength is only silence before defeat. Sarika spent her days organizing records of the battle, creating archives so that no one would ever forget. She wanted to record not just the events but the spirit behind them, the courage, the unity, the choice to stand when surrender seemed easier. One evening she found Elias in the hangar bay. He was standing beside a small shuttle inspecting its engines. "You're leaving," she said quietly. He didn't turn immediately. "Yes," he said finally. "I've stayed longer than I should. There are still lost places out there, broken worlds that need someone to remind them what it means to stand." Sarika's chest tightened. "You don't have to go. You could stay here. You have a home now." Elias smiled faintly. "Home isn't always a place, Sarika. Sometimes it's the people you've helped become strong. You don't need me anymore." "But we want you here," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "and that means I've done my job." For a moment neither spoke. The silence between them carried all the emotions words could not. Then Sarika stepped closer. "At least let me record one last interview for the archives. A message for future generations," Elias chuckled. "You historians never stop collecting stories." "Stories keep us alive," she replied. "They remind us who we are." Later, in a quiet recording chamber, Sarika set up the holographic recorder. Elias sat across from her, looking surprisingly calm for someone about to leave an entire civilization behind. "All right, Captain Ward," she began gently. "What message do you want to leave for the Zalathi, and maybe for the galaxy?" Elias thought for a moment. Then he spoke slowly, his voice steady and warm. "Strength isn't about fighting. It's about standing when it's easier to fall. You don't need to love war to be brave. You just need to love peace enough to protect it. Don't forget who you are. Don't let comfort make you weak. And never believe that courage belongs to humans alone. It belongs to everyone who dares to care." When he finished, the room was silent. Sarika's eyes shimmered, though she tried not to show it. "That's beautiful," she said softly. Elias gave a small smile. "It's just the truth." The next morning, the entire station gathered to see him off. The hangar was filled with Zalathi of all ages, scientists, engineers, students, and guards, all standing in respectful silence. Sarika stood at the front as Elias approached the shuttle. "Captain Ward," said one of the younger officers, "we'll remember what you taught us." "Don't just remember it," Elias said kindly. "Live it." He turned to Sarika. "You'll take care of them, won't you?" "I will," she said firmly. "And if you ever need help again?" She smiled. "We'll know how to fight for ourselves." Elias laughed quietly. "That's what I wanted to hear." Then he stepped inside the shuttle. The engines hummed, the platform opened, and the craft rose slowly toward the stars. Sarika watched until it vanished into the darkness. For a long time, no one moved or spoke. Months passed. The story of the human who fought for peace spread far across the stars. The Vorax Dominion never returned. Their defeat had weakened their pride. Other worlds began forming their own alliances, inspired by Nova Station's stand. Sarika continued her work as a historian, but her writings changed. Her books were no longer just about ancient wars and long-dead empires. They were about the living, about courage, hope, and the power of one act of bravery to reshape an entire civilization. In her lectures, she always told her students, history is not only written by those who win wars, it is written by those who choose to stand for peace. Her students listened with wide eyes, imagining the human captain who had once walked their halls. Years later, when Sarika had grown older and her hair turned silver, she often visited the observation deck. There, she would look at the stars and wonder where Elias Ward had gone. Some said he helped rebuild other colonies. Some said he joined new explorers in distant galaxies. Others believed he was still out there, quietly watching over the places that had learned to fight for peace. One evening, as she stood alone in the observation deck, a small light streaked across the sky, a ship passing in the distance. She smiled softly. "Still flying, aren't you, Captain?" She pressed her hand against the glass. "Thank you." Behind her, the new generation of Zalathi guards trained in the courtyard, their movements disciplined, their hearts brave. They had never met Elias Ward, but his lessons lived in every one of them. The galaxy might forget names and faces, but it never forgets courage. And so long after the human had vanished among the stars, his story became legend. They told their children, "Once we thought fighting was a weakness. Then a human showed us that fighting for peace is strength." And through time, through generations, his message endured. Even in the farthest corners of the Orion expanse, when darkness threatened peace, the Zalathi remembered the man from Earth, the one who reminded them how to stand. The Zinthar Empire had ruled the stars for more than 3,000 years. From the edge of the Orion cluster to the frozen moons of Drazar, their banners flew over every world they had conquered. No race dared to challenge them. No world dared to resist. Among their greatest commanders was Lyra Cthulhu, a name that inspired both admiration and fear. Her armor shone like silver, her eyes burned like cold fire, and her voice carried the authority of command. She was known for her intelligence, precision, and most of all, her lack of mercy. To Lyra, emotion was weakness. She believed victory belonged only to those who could think like machines. Compassion, fear, sadness, all were useless traits to her. She had never lost a battle, and she never expected to. That changed the day she heard the name human. It was during a routine briefing on her flagship, Zin Shara, orbiting the mining world of Kalos 5. Her second officer, a tall alien with 4 arms named Terran Vol, entered the command chamber carrying a glowing data tablet. "Commander," Terran began, bowing slightly, "our scouts detected an energy signal on the edge of the Helion sector. It matches old pre-Empire transmissions, ancient but active." Lyra didn't even look up from her console. "And why should that concern me?" Terran hesitated. "Because, Commander, the signal originates from a human colony." That made her pause. Slowly she turned her head, her silver eyes narrowing. "Humans," she repeated, almost laughing. "That extinct myth? The emotional savages who destroyed their own planet?" "Yes, Commander," Terran replied carefully. "But the data is real. The signal is broadcasting from Helion 3, one of the lost outer colonies. It appears someone is alive there." Lyra stood from her chair. The command crew went silent. Even the engine seemed to quiet down as her boots clicked on the metal floor. "Humans," she said again with quiet amusement. "The galaxy's most fragile species, the ones who thought bravery could defeat evolution." She walked to the wide observation window. Outside, the endless sea of stars shimmered like diamonds. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered. "We will secure Helion 3 and bring back proof that the humans are finally gone." Her officers bowed in agreement. None dared question her decision. Helion 3 was a dead world. Once it had been a bright colony filled with green forests and crystal lakes. Now, centuries after the fall of humanity, it was silent. The sky was filled with dark clouds and drifting ash. Ruins of metal towers stood like broken teeth across the wasteland. When Lyra's fleet entered orbit, scanners detected faint energy readings, but no signs of civilization. The planet appeared empty. No life forms, no settlements, nothing but wind and dust. Still, Lyra felt something strange. A whisper in the static. "Deploy the first landing team," she ordered. Her transport ships descended through the stormy atmosphere, their engines cutting through clouds of ash. When they landed on the cracked ground, the soldiers spread out in formation, weapons ready. At first, everything seemed quiet. The ruins were old, ancient even, but signs of human design were everywhere. Rusted vehicles, faded signs in English, and shattered glass glimmering beneath the dust. Terran's voice came through the comms. "Commander, we have found an abandoned human outpost. The structure appears centuries old, but power is still running in some systems." "Show me," Lyra replied. Moments later, she was standing in what had once been a control room. The walls were covered in moss and dust filled the air, but a single holographic terminal still flickered weakly. Its display showed the human emblem, a blue globe encircled by wings, a long-forgotten symbol of Earth. Lyra touched the console. It came to life, showing words in faded English. Colony record, Helion 3 defense, grid status, critical failure. Survivors, unknown. She tilted her head slightly. "Impressive," she murmured. "Even after their extinction, their machines still breathe." Terran approached with a small metal object he had found buried in the dust. It was a human dog tag. The letters were scratched but readable. Vale, Aaron, Cap to 7th Earth Defense Brigade. "Whoever he was," Terran said, "he died a long time ago." Lyra took the tag and looked at it for a long time. Something about the simplicity of it, just a piece of metal with a name, felt oddly powerful. "Humans were sentimental," she said coldly, tossing it back. "That's why they fell." As the search continued, strange things began to happen. First, one of the patrol squads went silent. Then another. Drones sent to investigate showed only empty ground and broken equipment. The communications feed filled with static. Lyra frowned. "Report." No response. A low wind howled through the ruins, carrying an eerie sound, not mechanical, not natural, almost like a human whistle. The soldiers grew uneasy. They had fought rebels, pirates, and rival empires, but this felt different. The shadows of the ruins seemed to move on their own. When another squad vanished, Terran rushed back to Lyra's position. "Commander, we have a situation. Something, or someone, is attacking our troops. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Impossible. There are no life forms here. Terran showed her a helmet camera recording. It was blurry and short, but in the last second of the footage they could see a flash of motion. A dark figure, fast, agile, almost invisible in the dust. Then the feed cut out. Lyra watched the clip twice, then said calmly, "Enhance." The image sharpened just enough to reveal a human silhouette. Broad shoulders, long coat, a faint blue glow from his visor. "He's alive," Terran said softly. Lyra's expression didn't change. "One survivor, a ghost? Hardly worth our attention." She turned away, but then Terran spoke again. "He destroyed 3 squads, Commander." That made her stop. Terran continued, "And he left something behind. A message." He handed her a datapad showing a single phrase, carved deep into a wall of concrete near the attack site. The words were written in bold, uneven English letters. "You should have stayed away." Lyra read it slowly, then looked up at the storming sky. "Interesting," she said at last. "It seems this human believes he can challenge me." Terran hesitated. "What are your orders?" Lyra smiled in a cold, sharp smile. "We hunt him." That night, the Zinthar camp glowed with blue fire as searchlights swept across the ruins. Soldiers patrolled in teams, scanning every shadow. Drones hovered above, their sensors tuned for movement. But the enemy moved like smoke. Silent. Invisible. A sniper drone exploded without warning. Then an ammunition crate went up in flames. A moment later, a squad vanished into the fog. Their last transmission a brief cry for help. The human struck from the dark using traps and old technology. He seemed to know every angle, every blind spot. The Zinthar soldiers, trained for open warfare, had no idea how to fight an enemy like this. Lyra stood at the center of the chaos, calm as ever. "He is clever," she said softly. "He studies us, learns from us. Typical human adaptability." She turned to Terran. "But even the clever fall when the pressure grows." Then, through the static, a voice came over the comms, deep, calm, human. "You shouldn't have come here." The words froze every soldier in place. It was the first human voice any of them had ever heard, tired, strong, and filled with quiet anger. Lyra slowly lifted her head. "So the ghost speaks," she said into her communicator. "You think one man can fight an empire?" There was silence for a moment, then the reply came, "I'm not fighting your empire. I'm protecting what's left." Then the line went dead for the first time in her long, victorious career. Commander Lyra felt something she could not easily name. Not fear exactly, but something close. She looked at the storm above Helion 3, lightning flashing across the clouds. Somewhere out there in the dark ruins, a human was watching her, and she realized this would not be an easy conquest. This would be a hunt.